It's Lisa from Been There, Got Out. I am melting here in the East Coast. We're in the middle of the heat wave. It's like 95 degrees and 6 p.m. Eastern time. So sorry I'm so shiny for the camera. But anyway, tonight's guest is Sara Mathews Dixon. Here she is. Very good. Let me just let her in. Okay, Sara, that should work. And perfect.
Hello, everybody.
So Sara, we popped on earlier just to make sure that she would get on live because it's her first Instagram live interview, even though she's been doing this for decades, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So we were lucky enough to meet in real life, and she had a bit, I heard all kinds of great things about her, and then we met, we had our own little talk, and I thought, she's perfect. I am nabbing her for an Instagram live interview, so here she is. And thanks, Sara. I was just saying, I'm so sweaty over here. I just have a fan on. You look a lot cooler than I do in your office.
There's air conditioning in my office.
Not me. All right. So why don't you first tell us a little bit about your background, your experience, because when we met, I was so impressed. And I also wanted to know what attracted you most to this field.
I was attracted to social work when I was a senior in high school. I was talking to a teacher about college and what was I going to do and focus on. And he kind of talked about work a little. Okay, check it out. And it turned out it was the perfect choice for me. So that's how I got into it. I've been in the field for 22 years. I've worked in several different places, psychiatric hospitals, substance abuse clinics, level 2 group homes for boys. So I have a lot of different experience, and then private practice all along the way. And now I'm solely in private practice.
Right. And I remember you saying you worked with adolescents in particular. Did you say something like that in the past?
I do. I work with adolescents in particular. At Four Winds Hospital, I worked on an adolescent unit. So it was 5 years of just adolescents and their families.
Oh boy. And I used to teach high school, so we both have a lot of experience with teenagers.
Yep. That is the my clients now are adolescents.
Yeah, and that's a big reason why I thought I'd pull you in for this interview, because in our community here, even though Chris and I with Been There Got Out specialize in legal abuse, we find that the majority of our clients, besides getting through the family court system, their biggest concern is their children, teenagers, little kids, even adult children, and how to get through this, and especially when they're dealing with a difficult co-parent or toxic parent. People are terrified that their kids' lives are going to be destroyed. So I thought, perfect to have you with your background to talk about and hopefully calm people down and comfort them. So another thing that, did you want to say something before I launch into my next?
That.
Okay. So one thing that really impressed me is that you make yourself so available to your clients like I have never heard in the past. And I was thinking that many of our clients are really upset that their lawyers never get back to them. But you as a therapist, like, tell everyone how available you make yourself to your clients.
So I am available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year. If you are having a crisis, I would rather you reach out to me than, info line at 211 or, obviously if it's a medical emergency, you call 911. But before we get to that point, call me first. Let me give out, if I can help and avoid the 911 call. And sometimes I can, and sometimes I can't. But most of the time, a teenager is in the middle of an anxiety attack and they can't get themselves out of it. So I can talk to them for 5 or 10 minutes. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They feel better. They go on with their day and their entire week is not destroyed.
That is amazing. And not only for your clients who are teenagers, but for anybody, especially as a parent. I know that we tend to feel things very powerfully, especially when our kids are suffering. So knowing that there's a third party that our kids could reach out to anytime is such a comfort.
And parents reach out to me too and say, what do I do? This is what's going on. I don't want to, I don't want to call 911. I don't want to call, outside services. What do I do here? And sometimes, most of the time, I can help and walk them through the situation.
That's exceptional. Okay, and another thing that stood out, which I hadn't heard of, is you mentioned that you have a psychodynamic approach. What is that? What does that mean?
So psychodynamics means that in my education and social work school at NYU, we were really taught to think about, kind of Freud's theories and the unconscious and how things are working and going on in our brain, and not just what's going on in the moment, but what's going on all around you, what's going on in your milieu, what traumas have you suffered, what life situations have you experienced, what's your education, and bringing all those things together helps me to figure out a person as a puzzle.
So it's like the whole background thing. It's not just this particular situation.
Not the particular situation. It's the whole person's life story. Our life story makes up who we are. And if we don't understand the person's life story and how they got to the place they're in, how can we help them to figure out what's going on, how to intervene, and then how to move forward?
And I just thought of something when you said that. How do you deal with trauma that's intergenerational? It's an easy one to answer, right?
Right. It's harder. You have to actually figure out that the trauma is intergenerational before you can even begin to address it. Most people don't even realize that that's what's going on. So I don't do short-term therapy, right? If you're the person that says, I want 6 sessions and I'm good and I'm done and I'm out, I explain that I'm just not that person, because I need to develop a rapport with you so that I can learn all those kind of deep, dark secrets that people don't want to tell us, like intergenerational trauma, so that I can kind of figure out what's going on. Because if I don't flip over all the pieces of the puzzle, how can I figure out how they go together?
Yeah, and what you said about people saying, I only need this before they even start, to me, with who we coach, that already tells me that's not our kind of person either, because you don't know what's going to come up and you don't know what's going to come out. And to already have decided that you know better than we do means that you're not as open-minded and dealing with things as they come.
I'll try. If somebody says, well, I'll give it a try, I'll say, okay, then, we'll try. But, if they say, okay, well, it's been 8 sessions, I'm done. I'm like, I explain that we might not be the right fit and part ways. And I try to help them find somebody that's going to work better for them. But it takes time, and somebody who's not willing to be open-minded and understand that I don't have a crystal ball to figure out exactly how long things are going to take. It makes it a harder relationship.
Yeah. And it's funny because you say crystal ball. Chris and I always say we don't have a magic wand to make this go away quickly, because people are always like, okay, just tell me how to get out of the legal system right now. Just because I don't want to be here. I'm like, neither do any of us. And if I knew, I would wave that wand, but I can't tell you. I mean, there's all kinds of things that I can do, but making it end quickly is not one of them. And I bet that's the same thing for you. You can't take the trauma away. You can't take the pain away quickly.
As much as people want me to, they want me to wave that magic wand. And I say I'd be the best therapist, the most sought after therapist in the world. I'd be able to do it for free if I had a magic wand. I just don't have that. We have to actually do the work to get to the end of the road. And when your person can commit to doing that work, we normally find success.
Yeah. Is there like a certain type of person that you can tell is going to be like a good client, like someone who's malleable? Like, can you recognize that in the beginning?
Usually, somebody who comes in and says, like, I've tried a couple therapists, I haven't had any good luck, but I really don't want to feel this way anymore. I'm really willing to do whatever I have to do. That person, the person who says, well, I've been suffering, don't want to suffer anymore, so help me now. And even people who say, I'm here because my wife or husband said I have to be here, like they can't deal with this situation anymore. That person is motivated. It might not be the motivation I want them to have, but it's still a motivation, and they still
because they showed up. They made the appointment, they got to the appointment, and they're sitting there.
And that's all that matters. You know, I hear people say all the time, well, don't send me somebody you don't like. I'm like, no, send me everybody, because eventually I can usually get them to want to stay.
Yeah, that's a talent. So I was going to say that a lot of our people are dealing with trying to find a therapist for their children. And I know in the beginning, you know, when my ex and I split and the kids were a mess and none of us could figure out what was going on, I was thinking, I need to find someone, I need to find somebody fast. And luckily in our town, we had this place called Kids in Crisis, and they gave some great recommendations. But I was thinking, just like when someone's about to embark on a divorce, they need to know what kinds of questions to ask to figure out if someone might be the right fit. So for you, in your experience, like, what are some questions that when somebody's not picking a therapist for themselves, so I'm not hiring you for me, but I'm hiring you for my kids, what kinds of questions do you think a parent should ask when they're trying to find a therapist for their children? And I don't know if it's different for different ages or if teenagers should conduct the interview themselves. What do you think?
I think there's a few basic questions that you would ask for all ages, right? You want to know the person's approach. Are they going to have the I'm the professional, listen to me approach, or are they going to have more of a partnership approach, which is what I do. You know, I want to be taught. I need my client to teach me what it's like to be them. So I'm willing to learn, where not all clinicians are. They want to take I'm the therapist, I'm the professional approach, do what I say.
Right.
So kind of understand what their approach is. How much involvement will the therapist allow as a parent? And that's going to differ between ages. Small children need a lot more involvement than adolescents. You know, some therapists will not see the parents at all. Well, if you want to be a parent that's involved at least a little bit to understand what's going on, that might not be the right person for you. Mm-hmm. So things like that are definitely just generic questions I would ask about anything. But then if you have your child has some specific need, you would want to ask if the therapist has any experience with that specific population or that specific disorder. You know, maybe your child has special needs. Maybe they have a processing disorder. Maybe they have things that going on that they specifically need somebody. Maybe they only want a female or they only want a male. You know, so there's things like that. Otherwise, I think those are like the most basic questions you can ask. It really comes down to, number one, what is your philosophy about rapport, right? Is the rapport important to the therapist or not? Because if the rapport is not important and they can't connect with your child, it doesn't matter how good they are, they're not going to be a good fit. So really understanding if that person thinks that building a rapport and a trusting relationship is important.
Yeah, definitely. Now, before I go, I'm like, ooh, that could be such a smooth segue into my next question, but I can't because I want to ask you a question about that. So a lot of our people, and this was my issue too, they are worried, they're concerned if the therapist has a background in narcissistic abuse or coercive control, but they might not have the words to say that. Like, what's a way to ask you something like that? Do they say, are you trauma informed? Like, how do you find out? Because a lot of therapists don't have a background in that.
Right. So I just had a mom ask me, well, what happens when he tries to tell you his version, but it's so different than everybody else's version?
Yeah.
Right? Okay, well, you know, sometimes people do that, and it takes me a session or two, but I usually figure out what's going on, and I start, you know, challenging them on those statements. So they don't have to say, you know, do you have a background in coercive work and working with somebody, or somebody who has a domestic, you know, abuse situation? They just have to describe what they're experiencing. And if I can figure out what they're trying to say, then I can figure out how to answer that question. They don't necessarily have to use the right terminology.
That's the same thing we say with court.
Right.
The label, we actually say, don't say the label. because you don't know most
Right.
of the time, but describing the patterns of behavior. And what you said about the woman, I'm like, oh, that's exactly one of our clients who is, one of their big fears is my ex is going to convince the therapist to believe their story. That is, they always panic about that.
Mm-hmm. Right, because they're used to these their spouses who can, work the room. And since they've been able to do that in the layperson world, they think that the clinician will also be fooled. But we do this every day. I do this multiple times a day. I'm used to being lied to by omission.
Really?
Yeah. So you just have to, you learn to kind of figure it out and to read the body language and to read the signs. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. If you've ever had an adolescent client that didn't lie to you, you're not working with adolescents.
That's good. Absolutely. Okay. So now back to the thing you started saying about rapport, that is the most important thing, is making your clients, whether it's an adult or a child, feel comfortable, like they can trust you. So how are you able to build that trust, especially, I would imagine, in a short period of time? Because I know teenagers are like, if I don't like that, I'm not going back. I didn't like them the first time. How do you do it?
I just say, I'm not the excuse me, I'm not the expert. I've treated hundreds of teenagers, but your story is unique to you. Even if you have a similar trauma, a similar experience, a similar diagnosis, your story is yours. And you have to teach me what it is like to walk in your shoes every day. And I want to learn. And that really seems to be the ticket. That's what they need to hear, because the adults in their life are telling them how they feel. The adults in their life are telling them, you shouldn't feel that way. That's not what actually happened. You don't know what you're talking about because you're just a kid. So all I really have to do is tell them, I don't know anything. You need to tell me. And they're like, wait, an adult who's willing to hear my side of the story and not judge me and not tell me I'm wrong? And that's the beginning. And once I do that, then I start talking about strengths and what do you like to do for fun? And let's, it's a guy. So now we're talking about football. And they're like, oh, wait, she can talk football? Okay. I gotta challenge her, and then we have to have a football discussion. Or we're talking about music, right? And they're telling me how they like, today's hip hop music. And I'm like, oh, you don't know anything about anything, and then we got to and they're like, oh, miss, you listen to this? This is crazy. I didn't know you could listen to this. So I kind of tap into what do they like and then bond with them over those things. So first I'm telling them, I'm the expert. You got to teach me, which again is a new idea for teenagers. And then I'm trying to figure out what they like to do and how do I tap into those things. I will even do research on things that I know nothing about, so I can have a conversation with my client. We've read books at the same time, so we can have a book discussion, because the client feels like this book really can say things that they're not able to say themselves. So we read the book together and then we talk about it. They bring in their diaries, their journals, art pictures. They can draw in my office. I have clients who are teenagers, but they just want to play Jenga. Jenga, and guess who? And in that play, they're able to relax enough to just start talking. A client cry in my office, a 15-year-old cry in my office a few weeks ago, and she hadn't cried at her father's funeral, but she was able to cry in my office playing Jenga. So That was huge. That was huge for her.
Yeah. Yeah. What you said also about teenagers, by when you said that you say, I don't know anything, like you have to teach me. We know teenagers are know-it-alls just by nature. So they love that. I know, I'm sure. And the other thing, by saying how unique they are, everybody thinks that they're special. So you're just validating them so much. So I can see how this works too. And what you described too with playing games, and the main goal is getting them to relax. Like even with the body, we know when the body relaxes, think like giving birth is easier because when you're relaxed, everything is easier. So it makes sense when somebody relaxes that it's easier for them to talk because they're more comfortable. So whatever it takes.
Mm-hmm. I have clients that I can tell how their week was based on how they sit on the couch.
Mm-hmm.
If they're sitting back and they're kind of relaxed and sitting against the back cushion, or if they're sitting up front and their hands are, their hands are moving or their leg is tapping and they don't want to make eye contact with me. I'm like, all right, spit it out. What happened? And they seem to respect that. And it works even for young adults. You don't have to just be a teenager for that. I have young adults that works with too. Like, how do you know something's wrong? And I'm like, well, you didn't sit on the couch like your normal self. So, something's up.
Yeah. And it's fascinating because you do a lot of in-person, we do Zoom, and I can see things like that on screen. Like I can see when someone's holding their breath.
Mm-hmm.
And that where they're talking or they're talking really fast, but just the shoulders and things like that. And we'll say, you're not breathing.
Right.
And I'm not a therapist, but body language does say so much.
It does. It's huge.
Yeah. And it is interesting being close up on a camera because you can see their face much, much more clearly.
Yeah.
All right. So back to the thing about if the child is your client and the parent is really worried, and let's say, because again, this is like a lot of our clients were like, my kid's going to the therapist. I don't know what's going on. And I don't want to be inappropriate, but I want to know, like, how does the parent know how appropriate it is to when to sort of step in? And I know also there's the confidentiality thing because the child is your client. The parent is not your client, right? So
Correct.
How do you deal with that? Or what advice do you have for parents who are worried about how their kids are doing? The kids are not talking to them. How do they approach a therapist? Assuming that they forgot to ask the good question in the beginning about how much is okay.
Right. So I have open communication with parents within the confidentiality guidelines. I always tell my client if I'm going to talk to their parent, I let them know in advance if I feel like there's something I need to tell them that's not within the guidelines. And if you're a parent and you need to reach out to me, a simple I don't want to intrude. I don't want to violate any confidentiality laws, but how's my kid doing?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Just how's my kid doing? Like, I'm still worried. I'm not seeing any translation from what you said was going to be happening in session to home. I'm seeing the same behaviors. I'm just worried. Are they engaging? Are they talking to you? Is it okay if we have a session? And then I check in with my client. Is it okay if I have a session with your parents? How do you feel about this? Is there any off-limit topic?
Oh, interesting.
Sure, you can talk about everything except this, this, and this. Right? And then I will meet with the parents and give them my assessment of what's going on. And then tell them how I think they can help at home. Because a lot of times I do need parents to do things at home. Therapy is not just the hour you're sitting with me. Therapy is then taking everything we talked about and implementing it into your life. So if that means, like, I have an 8-year-old who has a code word with mom and dad for when he's getting too angry, right? So we have a code word. So we have to practice that. And I asked mom and dad, how's the code word doing? Is it working? Do we need to figure out a different intervention because this one's not really working? So I encourage parents to ask questions. And if I think I can answer, I do. And if I think I can't answer, I'll simply say, I have to get back to you on that. I need to talk to your child first. And that's, and that's everybody. Obviously my 8-year-old, he kind of sits in mom's lap during sessions. So that's okay. But everybody else, I check in with them before I speak to their parents if I think it's something I can't answer.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I've noticed is in these toxic relationships that we deal with largely, one parent says, I don't know what to do. And we've said, well, why don't you ask the therapist to do your own appointment? Because they'll be like, well, I need to change my ex. Like, my ex isn't cooperating and we're both supposed to be doing these things to help our kid. Kid's going to the therapist suggesting this. I'm the only one who's doing it. And so we'll say you can't force your ex to do it. So you're saying that it is helpful. So you can work with a parent to help their child directly because they can't make the other person do it. Do you ever feel hopeless or helpless yourself when you have two parents with a child with some serious issues and one is helping and the other is almost counter-parenting?
Yeah, you feel sad and you have to deal with that. And then I, lay awake at night trying to figure out what different intervention can I use? How can I get through to this other parent? And then sometimes it's just, how do I support who's engaged? How do I help that parent and that child as best I can? Because I can't get the other parent to commit. I can't get them to be engaged. And so there's times that happens, but you kind of use that to fuel yourself to say, okay, what can I do differently? What can I do better? Not my philosophy that a client never fails therapy. I, as a therapist, fail a client. But the client doesn't fail. It's my job to figure out a different intervention, to figure out a different way to connect with a parent or a child. It's not their job. So I look at it as I have to figure this out. And if I literally can't, I will say we have to just focus on this dyad and, do the best we can within what the system we have to work with.
Yeah. So I'm seeing question, how do you handle counter-parenting in therapy?
Kind of just what I said, I'm going to try to engage the parent that is counter-parenting because that happens all the time. And I'm going to try to have a one-on-one discussion with them. If I think that some harder intervention is necessary, like, listen, the reality is you're going to lose your child over this, right? Like, not legally, but as this child gets older and they start to see what's really happening, they're going to want less and less involvement with you. So sometimes I have to take like that hard line with them. And like I said, I try really hard to get them engaged. But if I can't, after multiple attempts, and sometimes the lawyer's even like, you got to stop. Like, they're not going to do it. Then I just have to focus on the child or the children and the parent that is engaged, because I can't control somebody else's behavior as much as I want to try.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that this happens all the time. So another thing that happens all the time in this community is one parent's attempts to turn the child against another parent. And it's especially common during a legal battle, custody battle, high conflict divorce. So, and I said this will probably be a long answer. So what are your observations in that? Like, how common do you see this in your practice, and how do you help the targeted parent, or how do you help the child? Because they're essentially, it seems like, being brainwashed. And even if they're an older child or a younger child, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And this is a huge pain point for our people, is when they feel like the other parent, the child, just going along with that narrative, and I don't know what to do, and I feel like they're slipping away from me, and they're just terrified. That's like one of the worst things that could happen.
Absolutely. I have a case where this is happening literally right now, and I haven't been allowed to talk to the children. So the only thing I can do is talk to the parent who's being pushed away.
Mm-hmm.
So what I would do, whether it was with the child or the parent, is I would try to talk about, or I would talk about, the reality of the situation without accusing the parent of doing it. Right?
Okay.
Like, so I might say, you've been told during the situation that dad left no money for you guys, right? However, I happen to know that's not the truth, that there is plenty of money to buy food. There's plenty of money for school clothes. There's plenty of money for new book bags and new cleats for football, right? I know you're being told something else, but I don't say who's telling them, because as soon as I say mom or dad is doing this wrong, child gets defensive.
Right. That's exactly what I was thinking, because the loyalty thing, and they're often stuck with both parents. So
It shouldn't be a loyalty thing. They should not be forced should never, ever, ever, ever be forced to pick one parent over another. That is the parent's doing, and that should never happen. But unfortunately, it happens all the time. So I simply don't accuse the parent of doing it. You have been told, right? You have heard, you have learned some way. You know, parents leave paperwork out on the counter knowing that coming home from school, so they read it on their own. Nobody told them that. Well, obviously somebody left it on the counter on purpose. But they're going to say, well, nobody told me that. I figured it out on my own. Okay, well, you figured it out on your own. However, there is a different side. There's always three sides to every story: his, hers, and the middle. So let's focus on the middle, right? I have to know, because I've been told by people in the situation, by the attorneys, by this, by that, that this is not the case. And I try to work at it through that by not accusing anybody of doing anything wrong. And then if somebody comes to me and says, literally, this parent told me this, and I know it's the opposite, then I very gently try to start interjecting, well, but was there new cleats for you? Right? Again, I'm not challenging their idea. I'm asking them basic facts. What were there new school clothes? Yes. Okay. How do you think they got bought? How do you think paid for them? Right? I'm asking them to think about it in a logical way so that they're coming to these conclusions on their own. And it's not just me telling them. Because I could tell them everything. It doesn't mean they're going to believe me.
Exactly. It sounds almost like you're gently reminding them of the truth and causing them to critically think about it. Okay, so even though this person might have said this, or you found this out, like, let's look at the facts, and then you can draw your own conclusions, but let's keep remembering the facts.
Right. Let's keep going back to the facts. Right. Well, so-and-so said there's no money for dinner. We cannot get Friday night pizza anymore. We can only eat what's in the house. Okay. When was the last time we ordered Friday night pizza? Well, today's Monday, so we had it on Friday. Okay. So we're still having Friday night pizza, even though somebody said there's not enough money for Friday night pizza. Right. So it's asking them to think about critically thinking, and again, just looking at the facts as they see them. Because I don't, one parent or the other just nowhere.
Right. I'm thinking of things that are even stronger than that when one parent is telling the other parent, that other parent is really mean to you. Or no, okay, let's say one parent, the ex-spouse says, the other parent is really mean to me. That person's the reason that I don't see you. That's a big one. Like, it's their fault that I can't see you more often. It's their fault that I could only see you during this particular time, even though it's been decided in court. It's the other person's fault that we're still in court. They're the one who broke up the family. So, like, really hardcore.
Like really hardcore stuff.
Yeah.
Then I just tell them that that's not what it is. I have to respect the fact that they have a brain in their head and not treat them like babies. And like, this is actually what it is. I'm sorry that this is what you've been told, but this is not the truth. Right? So I have a mom telling a daughter, your dad's never going to love you again. He's never going to take care of you. You know, he's a horrible man. He's a scumbag. And she's like, how do I not, like, that's my mom, and this is what she's telling me about my dad. What am I supposed to do? And I have said, I'm sorry she's saying that, but your father will always love you. Right? Just as simple as that. And tears are just coming down her cheeks. And it's I've talked to your dad. He loves you. He wants.
What about, this is another thing that makes me think, when there's abuse between the parents and then the child doesn't know, well, I guess it's sort of the same thing. The child doesn't know how to deal with that. Like,
well, right. So I think what you're saying is, in that situation, I start talking about how your mom and dad were not family to begin with, right? They chose to become a family, and they're doing a really bad job as being a mom and dad, right? And obviously my language changes depending on the age of the child, right? So even though this is that doesn't make your dad a bad person, it doesn't make mom a bad person, right? They still love you independently and they will always be your parent, but they're doing a bad job together, which is why we need to get divorced, which is why the separation has to happen, which is why dad needs to move out or mom needs to move out, because they can be a better parent to you separately, but they're always your parent. Just because they decided to stop being family doesn't mean that you are no longer family with this parent and family with that parent. It's just a different type of family.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. Yeah, yeah. All right. I was thinking, and that's making me think about reunification therapy. Big controversy in our community, in particular, because often there's a situation where there is some kind of abuse. Often it is against the child directly with one parent, and then not always though. But then there's this push for reunification therapy. Have you ever done reunification therapy, or what's your views on it?
So yes, I've done it, where there's verbal abuse but not physical abuse in this particular situation. I really, you have to be careful, because if the child doesn't feel safe, pushing for reunification before the parent has treatment is going to be traumatic for the child. So before I even consider going to a reunification situation, I want to know what type of treatment the abusive spouse is getting. And right, are they abusive to just the parent, or is there abuse to the child? And obviously just witnessing abuse is abuse. But I want to know what kind of treatment the other person has gotten, and had they completed the program. Did they complete it successfully? Can I talk to the provider of that program? Because I will not get involved in a situation where I think I'm just going to be traumatizing the child more by encouraging and working through unification. If that parent has done all of that work, is ready to commit to a healthy lifestyle, then I want to work with the child for several sessions to see where they are, and not just say, oh, well, dad says he's better, mom says she's better, you now have to just accept them and accept their apology. I disagree. And I won't go into a case like that. I want to know what kind of work has a child done. Can I work with a child on that trauma to be ready to focus on reunifying? Because it's only work if both parties are ready. You can't force a child who's been hit by a parent abused to just accept them as a safe person in their life.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear that. And I'm sure a lot of other people here are too. Okay,
Yeah.
I was going to say, how do you handle it? So sometimes, and I'm thinking of my own situation from years ago, but if you get a child in who, let's say it's during a reunification or something where there's been an estrangement for a while, and the child is in therapy with the parent, and the parent is emotionally abusing the child, or even just a family therapy session where a parent is emotionally abusing the child, like, how do you deal with that?
I literally tell them that they need to stop in this moment. You are not allowed to sit in my office and verbally abuse a child. If I'm writing reports for, an attorney, anybody, I'm like, this will be in my report. You may not sit here and abuse your child in my office. And then, if the child has come with the parent, if it's bad enough, I may call the other parent and say, can you come get the kid? Because I don't want them going home. Now it's not an easy situation. It's not one that we want to be in, but I will not sit there. And if I think the parent is calm enough for me to intervene in a let's use this as a corrective experience, then we're going to try that. Obviously, I want to try that first. But if it's severe enough that I feel like this has to stop right now, this is not a safe environment for this child, then I cut it off right then and there.
Yeah, I'm thinking like from my experience personally and also from a lot of our clients, often a toxic parent will fire the therapist who doesn't go along with that. Do you notice that too when you challenge certain people?
Yep. And they simply say because the parent, the therapist was found by one parent or the other, or that other parent's attorney, oh no, now I refuse to work with them. Right? They could have the best reputation, but because the opposite parent found them, that's it. I refuse. So that happens a lot, unfortunately. And there's families I can't help because they just won't hire me. You know, I end up working with just one parent as the therapist and not in reunification or not during the family work.
You know, I'm glad that you said that because often our people are dealing with trying to come up with a therapist for the child. And you know how it usually works is one side comes up with a list of 3 or so, and the other person gets to pick. Right. And if the person that gets to pick will often say, I don't want any of them because my ex and the attorney came up with the names, so I already know all these people are bad. But you're saying right. That's not always the case. Just because they came up with those names doesn't mean that the therapist is going to side with them, and that those names should be explored.
Absolutely. I tell my families that I am the children's advocate. Like, you are adults, and I understand that you've both been through traumas. You've been, a divorce, even if it's not traumatic, is still the death of a relationship. It's a traumatic in and of itself. But if I'm working with you, my job is the children. I'm here to protect the children, I'm here to advocate for the children. And that's really my focus. So I'm not taking mom's side or dad's side. I'm simply advocating for the children and pointing out facts and behaviors that each parent may be engaged in. But they're not my focus. My focus is the kids.
I was going to ask another thing that I just thought of is often things will come out in therapy sessions that a parent will want to use in court during custody battle. And if you just write a letter, which I learned on my own, where I was like, oh, can't admit that as evidence because it's hearsay. You can't just write a letter. So someone might want you to come in and testify. You come in and testify, does that mean that you're breaking confidentiality and then you cannot see the child after that?
That's a really good question. I've actually not had that happen before. So I'm not sure how I would handle that. You caught me off guard for a minute. Or I think I wouldn't be breaking confidentiality if I spoke to the client, to the child, and said, this is what I'd like to do. Uh-huh. But if the child, like say it's a 15-year-old, no, you can't say that. Then I would say like, either I refuse to testify because it's going to destroy my relationship with this child, which then I could be subpoenaed, which is not fun. Or hopefully the child wants me to go in and say, so-and-so is hurting me. So-and-so makes me feel this way. So-and-so has done this, that, and the other. And they want me to be able to say that because they want to stay with the safe parent. So I'm really, so now that I'm thinking it through, I want to talk to the client, whoever is my client, which again is the child. I want to figure out what works for them. And can I kind of manipulate the situation in a way that works for them instead of just having to end the relationship.
Yeah, and so this is really interesting because one of the big themes we always talk about is the voice of the child in a family court situation, and sometimes the child doesn't have a voice unless it's through these third parties. So I love that you say you really talk to the child. It's not even what one parent wants or the other, or the attorneys. It's that you first would go to your client, who is the child, and say, what can I say and what can't I say? And is it okay to even testify in the first place? Right. So that's really interesting.
If that's a 6-year-old, that's a much harder situation, but if adolescent, it's much easier.
Yeah. Okay. And then I was just going to say, I don't have any other specific questions, but are there any other points that I might have missed that you want to talk about? And how can people find you?
So I can't think of anything specific that you missed. It was very thorough.
Okay.
People can find me at smdpsychotherapy.com. That's my website. I'm right in Darien off of exit 11, so super easy to get to.
All right, we're talking Connecticut because you're talking to people from all over the world.
Oh, I'm in Connecticut, yeah. I'm in Connecticut, so if you're in Lower Fairfield County, it's really easy to get to me. Otherwise, I do Zoom. I do telehealth sessions, and I work with people all across the country.
Okay, great. So I'm going to put your Instagram handle in there, and if they go to your Instagram handle, your website is right on there, right? Oh, wait, we got another question in, and there were a couple like things sometimes go by so quickly, and I'm looking. Can you see that question? Thoughts on guardian ad litem or child legal advocate?
I think a guardian ad litem can be really helpful because, again, their job is to advocate for that child. That is their only job. I have had them not work out so well, where the guardian ad litem does seem to side with a parent or not. But overall, the concept, I would recommend. Yes. Because again, their job is just to advocate for your client, for your child, and they're reporting directly to the judge as well. They're going to be in they're going to be in every, trial, every appearance, and they're going to be asked to report on exactly what they see.
Right. And they also can go more in depth. But we see also such a wide range of guardian ad litem people.
Well, a lot of different people can be guardian ad litem, so you don't necessarily get one who knows what they're looking at.
Yeah.
Right. So it is hard.
Okay, so Sarah, one more time, say your Instagram handle. I'll put it on our little recording, but how can people find you? Say your website again too.
So my Instagram handle is Sara_LCSW, just all lowercase. And then my website is smdpsychotherapy.com.
Okay, great. All right.
I see that comment.
I see my phone is like shutting down.